Hey, good Sunday evening, everybody. Welcome into the Rocky Top Rewind. I'm Eric Kane alongside Brent Hubbs. We'll have Matt Ray joining us around 7 or 8:45. Grant Ramy going to join us around 8:30. We're going to be with you guys until 9 o'clock Eastern Time here on the Volquest.com YouTube channel. And we're going to be breaking down Tennessee's 31-17 loss to Georgia, what this means moving forward. And, of course, we'll answer a bunch of your guys' questions, so go ahead and get those questions in the chat. We'll make note of that, and we'll try to answer as many as we can throughout the next hour. I do want to give a shout-out real quick before we get going to our friends over at Spivey King and Spivey LLP for being the presenting sponsor of the Rocky Top Rewind all season long here on Sunday nights. You got a problem, let them find a solution for you. TN Trial Lawyers, that phone number for a free consultation if you guys have the need, 423-245-4185, 423-245-4185. Online at SpiveyKingandSpiveyLLP.com. Spivey King and Spivey, you got a problem, let them find a solution for you. That is TN Trial Lawyers. Tennessee falls between the hedges to Georgia, 31-17, the final score. Brent Hubbs, Tennessee led 10-0 at the end of the first quarter, and then outscored 31-7 the rest of the way. Defense has been so great all year long. Wasn't on Saturday, and of course, another half where Tennessee's offense was shut out. So it was a good start. Not the finish you want, and ultimately the result is a 31-17 loss.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I think in the preseason, everybody would have said, going down there and winning is really hard. Nobody's done it in now 29 games against Georgia. So, I think it's how it happened, Eric. It was the 10-point lead. Tennessee had some things going. And then the defense has traveled all year long, and it didn't travel on Saturday night. It just didn't travel. You thought Tennessee, I thought first 1-20 would win. It turned out that to be the case, but I didn't expect 31 to be on the board. And disappointing. I think the magnitude or the disappointment is magnified because what you realize is that game became so important because of what you didn't get done in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And as the days pass by, that one in Fayetteville is going to hurt more than the one in Athens, Georgia hurts because Georgia's going to be, I think, a playoff team. Arkansas may not be bowl eligible. And if Tennessee had won at Arkansas, they would be a win over Vanderbilt away from representing, one half of the team combination of teams in Atlanta for the SEC championship game. So in the grand scheme, the loss to Arkansas hurts a lot more. It was a lot more impactful. But, to have that game tied at the half, to be right there and to be in it, and for it to finish the way you did is disappointing. And then the defense, which has been so good all year long and carried Tennessee, just couldn't deliver on Saturday night.
Yeah, let's remind everybody, obviously, in case we're forgetting, getting caught up in what happened yesterday. Tennessee's defense is the reason Tennessee's in the middle of college football playoff conversations, the reason Tennessee entered that game 8-1. But yeah, it didn't have a day. It did not have a day on Saturday. It's unfortunate. 31 points, obviously a season high. That strand of 10 straight games where Tennessee held its opponents under 20 points, that's no more. Allowed 453 yards of total offense. Tennessee's third down defense was so fantastic all year long. Brent might have been the nation leader. I know is probably top 2, top 3, low 20s. It allowed over 50% of third down conversions to Georgia in this game, 8 of 14. Look, if you want to look at the Georgia scoring drives, that kind of paints a picture for you, right? It's, 7 plays, 75 yards, 10 plays, 84 yards. In the second half, they just dominated the time of possession. 12 plays, 87 yards, 7:22 off the clock. 12 plays, 92 yards, 6:21 off the clock. So Tennessee defense just couldn't get off the field. And a lot of it, I think, starts up front. I mean, sure, did the secondary have a good day? No. Did Tennessee's linebackers have a good day? No. But Tennessee didn't blitz an awful lot, it didn't look like. They played some games up front, but just no pressure. 2 tackles for loss the entire game. No sacks. I think 7 quarterback hurries, according to Pro Football Focus, but no quarterback hits, which is mind-boggling. Carson Beck, I think we all kind of said, last week he's struggled, of course, but when he's given time, he's a pretty good quarterback and slinging around the yard. I mean, he had a ton of time the other night, and Carson Beck looked like the guy everybody thought he was going to be entering the season. Unfortunately, it was against Tennessee, and a large reason for that is Tennessee just couldn't pressure him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take anything away from what Carson Beck achieved, but I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks around the country would have done what he did on Saturday night with the lack of pressure. It's really fascinating how quickly things turn. He was 2 of 9 to start the game. And then he has that third down completion to Dominic Lovett that turns into a 38-yard gain. And from that point on, he went 22 of 30 for 297, 2 touchdowns. In the second half, um, he was 11 of 12. 91% was his completion percentage in the second half against Tennessee. They schemed Tennessee. Tennessee didn't get pressure. Tennessee gave up in the middle of the field. It was open. They exploited it. I don't want to take anything away from Carson Beck. There was a few tight window throws that he made. Receiver made a good play on a ball that was a one-on-one ball with McCoy in the second half. But there were a lot of really open throws that weren't real hard to make. And I just think that's that's just a bad night for Tennessee to have a bad night. And Tennessee had a bad night defensively. And it starts up front. That up front group is supposed to carry Tennessee, and they didn't carry them. That's a Georgia team that gave up 5 sacks on the road the previous week. They didn't get their quarterback hit Saturday night. And then I think that's more of Tennessee's play, reflective of Tennessee's play, than Georgia doing some kind of magic 180 on their offensive line from one week to the next.
Let's go ahead and jump into some of the questions here, and we'll take your questions throughout the hour. Ben wants to know, explain to me why I shouldn't go full tinfoil hat here on the drive that gave Georgia the 24-17 lead. This is in the third quarter, a huge drive. It was the 12-play, 87-yard drive that took 7:22 off the clock. The 12 men on the field call, the face mask call, fumble that wasn't called a fumble, miss holding call that sprung back. I mean, there was so much that you had to unpack from this drive. Brent, what was your thoughts on the penalties? The first with the face mask with Ricky Gibson, and then second with the 12 men on the field with Jackson Moy.
Well, the Ricky Gibson penalty is a miss. The helmet comes off. That's one of those. It looks like it's a face mask, so you call a face mask. He never grabbed, from every angle I saw on replay, he never grabbed a hold of the head. He never grabbed a hold of the face mask. Did he have the back of the head? Maybe, but I think that's a guy who didn't have his chin strap buttoned down real tight. And so the helmet came off. You're watching that live, you see the helmet come off, you think somebody ripped it off his head in a face mask. I'm not defending the officials. It's a bad call. I think that's what the officials thought they saw, and they threw a flag on that. I think the 12 men on the field thing is really fascinating because the letter of the law in that is so gray that you have to get off the field in a timely manner. Well, what's a timely manner, right? I mean, it's that when it felt like the officials got mad, right? Because Tennessee was taking advantage of a rule. So all of a sudden the guy marks it ready for play, and then Moy sprints. I thought he was off the sideline or a foot from the sideline. He wasn't involved in the play. I think in most cases that one gets let go. And you certainly don't review it at that point. So that one was mind-boggling. On the holding penalty, I don't think you asked for me to address all these, but I'm just going to address them all right out of the gate here.
Well, let me jump in about the holding penalty real quick, and then you certainly
sure
come behind me. Jeremiah Thielander 100% held the guy. That's the correct call. They also miss about 3 holds on the offensive line. So Brent, tell me that should have been offsetting in my opinion, but of course they called it on Tennessee. So there was holding on that play, no doubt, but there was also holding on both teams.
Well, and it looked like there was a leg whip or a trip attempt by the tackle on James Pierce. I've said this, the fumble thing, I thought you should have reviewed that one because I think there was a clear Tennessee recovery on that. I don't know that he tucked that ball away. I know he took steps, but I don't know that he completely took them with control. That one to me was more, I guess, inconclusive or more up in the air on the fumble on that particular play there. So I'm surprised they didn't review it, but they didn't. I said this in maybe it was the day after. I said it again, I think, in 10 Things. College football's got a problem with officiating. They really do. And there's a lot of money involved in college football right now, more money than we've ever seen. And the impacts of the impact of these outcomes of games have bottom line financial impacts. And college football's got to address the officiating issue. The lack of transparency in officiating is a real problem. And nobody's going to do no national media people is going to do a big takeout on officiating, right? ESPN's not going to do a feature on game day about the struggles of officiating because they got all the games. They've got the playoff. That's not a story that the news side's going to dive into, okay? And quite frankly, nobody in the league office cares what Brent Hubbs thinks at Volquest. So, do coaches have to make more of an issue of this and be willing to take the fine? And I don't know if we ever get to a point where a coach does that, or if it's a little bit of this passive aggressive sort of talking roundabout. Think about what Kirby Smart said after the Texas game. They tried to take it from us. Well, he wasn't talking about Texas. He was talking about the officials. No fine.
Yeah.
Passive aggressive response. No fine takes place there. Josh Heupel will not get fined for anything he said in his post-game press conference. So, at some point, does somebody have to get really specific about things and kind of go scorched earth? Well, if you do that, what's the impact on you for your future games? It's just, again, I think college football has a problem. They had a play in the Clemson game yesterday, Eric. I don't know if you saw that, where the defender basically hit the quarterback in the head. It was kind of a forearm shiver. He stumbles forward and falls down. They don't call anything. They mark the ball. Then all of a sudden the officials huddle up and they come out of it and they call a penalty. Like way after the play happened.
Yeah.
The lack of pass interference call in the Nebraska USC game is one of the worst calls I've ever seen based on the Twitter highlights I've seen. So it's not just in the Tennessee-Georgia game. It is a problem across the country. And I don't know that we're going to see any kind of fix to it because I don't know who's going to hold anybody accountable to it. But I understand coaches' frustration. I understand every fan's frustration with it. Tennessee will turn in 12 to 15 plays to the league office. I bet Kirby turns in 6 to 10, right? That he's got a problem with. Happens every week. They come back. Yeah, we probably missed that one. Okay, next. And that's
we'll
where
learn
it's at.
from it.
Yeah, we'll learn and grow from it. Okay.
No.
That's what they told Tennessee before replay when the LSU quarterback, I don't know if it's Jamarcus Russell or who it was, fumbled along Tennessee's sideline. Tennessee picks it up and runs it in for a touchdown. This is going back 12 years ago. They came back, sorry, man, we missed that one. My bad, we missed that one.
A lot of good it does now.
It does nothing, and that's the frustration. That's the frustration with it.
Yeah, since the game's been over, Austin and I and Matt talked about it on the post-game mini-pod, and I've talked to some guys on the board, throughout Sunday. Like, I've been pretty consistent. I don't want to speak for you, certainly, but, Tennessee absolutely did not lose this game because of the officials. But that doesn't excuse the bad officiating. That drive that we're talking about right now was really bad. The fact that you didn't review what looked to be a catch and a fumble, you didn't even review it, didn't even take a look at it. Like, why did you not take a look at it? The Jackson Moy situation, when I was doing the rewatch and watching the television broadcast this afternoon, the sideline report, came out and said essentially like something around 3 healthy seconds. Well, what does that mean? And, Kirk Herbstreit was like, well, I've never heard that before. Like, everybody in the world's doing this right now. Like, Tennessee's just, number one, Jackson Moy had to come in and he addressed that last night. I guess he saw some social media stuff right after the game. Maybe some people were calling him lazy or something. He's doing exactly what he's coached to do. And if you watch Tennessee football, you see these guys do it every single week. But you're right. Like, that gray area is so, what's right and what's wrong. And the fact that, when they were reviewing it, I thought they were reviewing, I thought they might have been reviewing, did Turrentine, make an interception on the deflection? Because that was, Ricky Gibson broke the ball up and Turrentine dove for it in the end zone. I thought they were reviewing to see if we're up there, can't see a thing where we were sitting. I thought they were reviewing to see if they made an interception. No, they were reviewing to see if he was on and off the field. It's just, it's so confusing. And, maybe Josh Heupel does need to take a fine in a post-game press conference. He's done this a couple of times throughout the last couple of years where, sits there in silence or kind of did what he did last night. Maybe you do make a statement, take a fine or something. I don't know what it is, but to your point, it's not just here, it's everywhere. There's a problem in officiating. Last night, Tennessee got beat, couldn't get off the field on third down, couldn't stop a pass, couldn't generate pass rush, and he got shut out in the second half. That's why Tennessee got beat, but clearly the officiating was not good.
Yeah, but to Ben's point and his counterpoint back to you would be, hey, there's 4 plays on the scoring drive that gave Georgia the lead.
Yep.
We're not talking about one play. 4 plays in a 12-play drive that changed the course of that drive when you look at it. And I get that. I understand that. And again, I think the problem that everybody has with officiating, the problem I've had with it for a long time, it's never going to be perfect. The game is fast. There were more camera angles at that game. I mean, that was a full-blown ABC primetime deal. They got more camera angles than you have for the stream game you're going to see Saturday, right? I mean, they've got all the angles. So their mistakes get shown. The problem is we never know. All we think right now is that they get hey, we messed that one up. My bad. We'll try to do better. You never hear of anything else taking place. I mean, did we ever hear anything from the league office about what they did in the Texas-Georgia game, which was a precedent-setting play that they just got together and huddled up and called something there, which is, I mean, what is that kind of precedent does that set? So they're just things, the operation of it's not very good. The transparency of the operation is even worse. And I think that's what's maddening to every fan out there. And
we're going to continue to answer some of your questions as we work through this edition of the Rocky Top Rewind. We're going to have Grant Ramy stop by here in about 10 minutes, talk about Tennessee basketball's win. Matt Ray's going to join us. He had a sideline view of the game last night. We'll talk some recruiting as well about 8:45. That's all coming up next as we continue on here with the Rocky Top Rewind. I do want to tell you about our friends over at Spivey King and Spivey LLP. If you got a problem, you can let them find a solution for you. TN Trial Lawyers. They specialize in criminal defense, family law, and personal injury, divorce, custody, alimony, parental rights, personal injury such as car wrecks, accidents. Over 80 years of combined experience, Spivey King and Spivey LLP provides representation throughout state and federal courts of Northeast Tennessee. The firm, a vast amount of trial experience. Practice has been in place for 43 years. This specific partnership between Matthew A. Spivey, J. Matt King, and Richard A. Spivey been in place since 2012. They have partners who are energized for today's modern legal demands. They practice primarily in Northeast Tennessee, the Sullivan County, Hawkins County, Washington counties, and surrounding areas. The firm has won multiple awards and been rated by super lawyers with Mid-South real trial experience. So whether you've been injured in a car accident, need help with a divorce, help with custody of your children, or been accused of a crime, Spivey King and Spivey LLP is here to help you. You can get a free consultation by dialing the phone number 423-245-4185. Again, 423-245-4185, or visit them online at SpiveyKingandSpiveyLLP.com. You got a problem? Let them find a solution for you. TN Trial Lawyers. Hey, welcome back into the Rocky Top Rewind here on a Sunday night. Volquest YouTube channel. I'm Eric Kane alongside Brent Hubbs. Tennessee falls to Georgia 31-17. Before we get back into some of the questions, Brent, real quick, kind of what's this mean for Tennessee? I know it's disappointing right now, and we understand the percentages, and we'll dive into that throughout the week. And we understand there's a logjam of 2 lost teams there, especially from the SEC, fighting to get into college football playoffs. But season's not over. 2 weeks left. A lot can happen. Tennessee doesn't necessarily control its own destiny, but Tennessee's still in a decent spot with 2 games remaining in terms of the college football playoffs.
Yeah, it feels like they need help, but the only thing Tennessee can control right now is Tennessee, and I think the challenge for Josh Heupel and the challenge for the leadership on this team is get up off the deck and get ready to play. You need to be impressive against UTEP. You need to take out a lot of anger and frustration, play some young guys, heal up some veterans, and then go get yourself ready to play against Vanderbilt and what will be their Super Bowl and what will be an impactful, meaningful game for you. I mean, it starts with Josh Heupel. Josh Heupel has to set the tone tomorrow when he meets with his football team. I mean, it was very evident how disappointed, disgusted, angry, and all those emotions Josh Heupel had post game. Okay, he's got to flush. He's got to be the first one to lead the flush brigade and go from there. And then he's got to. I think he's got to challenge his team, and I think he needs to come out and call on the fans to come out and support this team. It's a senior day for a bunch of veterans, COVID guys who turned the fortunes of this program around. They were the catalyst for that. And I think Josh Heupel's got to sell that this week, as well as selling his football team to get the crowd there, to honor these guys for all that they've done. And they've got to turn the page quickly and get going. Now, this is not a UTEP team that should play with Tennessee, but you got to get up off the deck and go play. And that starts with Josh Heupel.
Brent, you gave him a game ball. You talked about him in 10 things you thought you learned from the game. Brian says, considering the situation, Nico had his best game with decision making. He missed some throws, but he was decisive running and passing. Like Arkansas, the offensive line did him no favors. I would agree. The protection, was an issue. He was running around. Some of that with Peyton Lewis in at running back, and we knew that going into the game. That's kind of why you wanted Deshaun Bishop to be ready and available, because he at least has some experience. But I thought the tackles didn't have their best days. Obviously, a couple of big penalties, but overall, like Nico missed high a couple of times. He threw behind. I thought Squirrel played pretty good considering, but I thought Nico played an okay game. Having said all that, the offense didn't find rhythm. You wrote about this, the lack of vertical passing, in the offense right now. That's, again, quarterback's very much involved in this, but I think Nico played better than his numbers: 20 of 33, 167 yards. 61% completion. What did you think about Nico's performance between the hedges?
I thought in that environment, I thought he played well. I thought he was locked in, ready to go right out of the gate. They executed terrifically on that first drive. I thought they did a nice job calling some things. Georgia adjusted to it. They heated him up. I thought he had to run more. He had 5 less completions than Carson Beck did, but he had over 100 yards less receiving yards.
Yeah.
And it's, everything was hard. Everything was like, every time you got to 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, you're like, oh, geez, I don't know. What are you going to do here? Everything felt hard for them. That's a credit to Georgia. That's a good tackling team. But Tennessee couldn't throw many 5-yard hitches and they turned into 10-yard gains, or a slant that turned into a play. They just didn't have a lot of yards after catch. They didn't take enough vertical shots. I know that the pressure was there, but sometimes you can catch a 3-step and kind of hang that thing up on a takeoff. I thought Tennessee got that early pass interference penalty, and I thought, you know what, they're going to challenge them down the field some. And they really didn't get back to it other than a double move to Dante Thornton. But I thought Nico was fine. There just wasn't enough help around Nico offensively for Tennessee to score enough points to be in this football game at the end.
I thought he made some really nice throws on outs at the sideline. I was sitting up there with some guys who covered Georgia, and he threw that one. I guess it was to Holden Stays. He had one in the first quarter, but he threw one like the third or fourth quarter, and they're like, golly, man, what do you do? How can you defend that? I thought he had some nice throws. I thought he made decisions to run early. I thought that was, a sign of growing, maturing, knowing, hey, 4th and short, 3rd and short. Let me just go get this right now. And he did that a couple of times. So, coming off a week of speculation, uncertainty, he got banged up the week before. I thought all things considered, he played pretty well. Dante Thornton had a bad drop that hurt him a little bit. Just Chris Brazzell was a no-show. They targeted Brew 4 times, I guess. He had 46 yards, but I thought he wasn't very much involved. Again, you kind of wrote about it. It's just no rhythm, no threats. It was just they were so out of sync offensively that they just couldn't throw the football with any type of confidence.
Well, part of that was pressure, but I think everything right now just kind of feels helter-skelter. It feels like there's a little bit of grasping for straws. And listen, Nico missed some stuff early in the year, and that's part of the reason why this offense has not been as productive. But I think you go back and look really from the second half on against Alabama, he's played pretty good football. I think that he truly turned the corner there, got a better command of things. Certainly, you'd love to have the Arkansas performance back if you're him. But I think that he is a guy who is developing and getting better with more and more experience. They just got to have more help around him. I mean, and listen, I'm not saying the game was over. This was a difference in the game. I mean, that Thornton drop was huge. That was a huge drop on a really good play, on a good out. He was open. It was a good ball. And that's just a play you got to make there and kind of get yourself continue going in the right way. And that was a chance to answer after Georgia had scored right there in the first half. And that was a big play. And I just think that Nico's not perfect. He's got a lot to learn and a lot to grow. But when you're a young quarterback, you need help around him. Part of the issue with Carson Beck going into last night is he hadn't had enough help around him. Guys dropping balls like crazy. Well, guess what? He started 2 of 9 because guys were dropping balls like crazy. Then they hit one play, and it just took off for them at home. And, quarterbacks get a lot of credit, a lot of the blame, but you got to have 10 other guys around him helping. Tennessee didn't give Nico enough help last night.
Yeah, he started 2 of 9, and then before you knew it, Oscar Delp, who came into the season with super high expectations, but been very pedestrian. He's kind of taken a back seat to the other tight end, Lucky. And he had 2 touchdown catches in the second quarter alone. I mean, you got guys stepping up all over the place. What would you say to Posty_25 here? What's holding our offense back? Play calling or personnel? I think we can nitpick play calling after every single game. We do it. I mean, you can say, well, this was a good call. This was a bad call. Wish they would have back to this. I mean, Miles Kitselman, 3 touches in the first series, and then I think he had 3 touches the rest of the game or something like that. But is it more play calling, more personnel? I think it's a combination of both, but I would say right now probably more personnel if a guy's just trying to make plays and, of course, protecting Nico to let it develop.
Well, I think it's both, and I think when you have some personnel issues, your job as a coach is you scheme around those personnel issues.
Make it right,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you help yourself out. That's something I learned from David Cutcliffe. I mean, Lucas Taylor was a 1,000-yard receiver for David Cutcliffe because that was his best weapon, and they moved him around and did a lot of things to make it work for him. I love the creativity in the red zone on the opening drive. I mean, the fullback, I was like, hey, that was a nice wrinkle. There's some things I don't think Tennessee – I think Tennessee's been – I don't want to say stale, but I don't think they've been as creative as they need to be. Like, go back to that Alabama game in 22. They motion Jalen Hyatt, right? And they get him out there on a little waggle out there to the pylon for a touchdown. I don't think we've seen that play since then. And there's a lot of stationary parts to the offense. And they're not playing with tempo. I think that affects them a little bit. So to answer his question, I think it's a combination of both. But when you have personnel and you think you have shortcomings in personnel, then you've got to play call around those shortcomings and help yourself out more.
Want to welcome on Grant Ramy to the show. Rusty is the second person in this live chat that kind of, and I saw it last night as well, draw similarities to Tennessee at Alabama last year. Like, great start, had a halftime lead, shutout blank, things went sour in the second half. Did you see some similarities between this game against Georgia on the road to Tennessee against Alabama last year, Grant? I think you're muted. No, I think you're muted. This guy has been working nonstop, and he drove us to Alabama, or to Georgia. So we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt while he figures out his mic.
Yeah, we got to see what's going on with that one. So we'll figure out what happens there. I'll jump in there and answer that question from a
I'm here. Am I here now?
Yeah,
there we go.
There you go. All right, we got Sarah to make the patch there at the telephone bank. So what do you got for me, Grant?
Rob Lewis on the Volquest on the Rocky Top Rewind, everybody. No, I didn't think about that similarity, but I think it's kind of true. A fast start, I think you can kind of get lulled into a sense of you start the game kind of attacking and trying to build that lead, and once you get that lead, you kind of start to try to play safe a little bit and protect that lead, and maybe you're doing things a little bit differently than you did to start the game. I also think it's hard to win on the road in college football. I think Josh Heupel said it Saturday night. I think Kirby Smart said it in his post-game press conference talking about their playoff chances and losing at Ole Miss. It's hard to win in this league. And when one thing happens and that stadium comes back to life, man, it's hard to stop that momentum. So there are some similarities there. I didn't think about that myself. But yeah, I think maybe sometimes you play a little bit different after you have some early success and you're trying to protect that lead, or not as much on attack, I guess, as you are to start the game.
Yeah, to me, that one feels a little different because I thought Tennessee at Alabama should have had a 3-score lead going into the locker room at the half.
Settled for field goals, yeah.
I mean, they settled for field goals in the red zone. I mean, they were up and down the field, vertical passing. They got to turnovers. Alabama was gift wrapping everything for them in the first half. And when you went to the locker room, it was like, wow, this is a huge missed opportunity. At Georgia, the disappointment was that, okay, you gave up the field goal late, but you knew they were going to make some plays. I mean, so I felt like it was a little bit different. I thought Tennessee should have had a much greater stronghold command in that Alabama game than what they did. I did not feel like, wow, Tennessee's left 14 points, 17 points on the field when they went to the locker room at Sanford Stadium. Now, maybe that's just me. I felt like they left a lot of points on the field in Tuscaloosa last year, not as many points on the field in the first half against Georgia.
I also never would have thought you go to Tuscaloosa last year, you better score those touchdowns because you don't know what you're going to be able to stop. At Georgia, I never would have expected Tennessee gets up 10-0 and Georgia goes 159 yards on back-to-back touchdown drives total. Like, that's just not what we had seen from this defense all season.
Yeah, and Josh Heupel coached that game at Alabama different, right? Like, I mean, he was aggressive on a couple of fourth down calls, gave Alabama a short field. He tried to play to his defense last night, and his defense just didn't respond and get off the field. They gave up way too many third downs and a lot of third and longs, to be honest with you.
Felt like Tennessee, didn't blitz an awful lot last night. They played some games up front, some twists and turns and all that, but second, third layer blitzing, I mean, you saw it a little bit, but according to Pro Football Focus, Grant, I know you were in all this earlier today, Carson Beck was blitzed 41% of the time. He was 17 dropbacks. He completed 11 of 15. Just overall, Brent and I had already talked about this, just the lack of pressure in this football game kind of translated into, it's like, okay, well, if you lost this game, well, a lot of people pick Tennessee to lose this game. That's something, it's kind of like how you lost this game because you've been so great at, playing defense and defending the run, defending the pass and all that. It's just kind of the way the game transpired is the real disappointment. I mean, it's disappointing to lose, but your strength was certainly not a strength on Saturday.
Right. I mean, you get out to a 10-0 lead with that defense that you've seen all season from Tennessee, and you think that's a very, very good start to a football game because we just had not seen them fail to get pressure. I mean, they didn't have, one quarterback hurry all night at Georgia. They didn't have one sack, obviously. They had 2 tackles for loss. I don't know what was different. I don't think what we saw Saturday night at Georgia is Tennessee's defense. I think what we saw the first 9 games of the season is the defense. I think there's more proof there. I think they just got out-coached, outplayed, outclassed at Georgia against a good football team, in a tough environment. But no, I mean, if you told me beforehand that Tennessee is going to give up 3 touchdown drives that went 84 or more yards, and they're going to give up 453 and 31 points, and Carson Beck, who Kirby Smart had been asked on Monday, are y'all thinking about making a quarterback change, was going to throw for 347 and go for 3 total touchdowns. I mean, that's like 10,000 to 1 odds kind of stuff because of what we had seen from that Tennessee defensive front and the defense as a whole. Also, I mean, we hadn't seen 19 or more points since Vanderbilt last November. It had been that long. So I don't know what happened to take the air out of the balloon. I think it's something that can be fixed. I think they just ran up against a good football team and kind of got out everything, I guess.
Brent, it's certainly not just Keenan Peely, but we talked about it last week. You've missed Keenan Peely the last 3 weeks. It's like against Alabama, it's like, okay, well, you didn't – I know he got hurt in that game, but it was the first series. It's like, okay, we didn't really notice it that much. And I guess who was after Alabama?
He got hurt in Florida, and then they missed him in the Alabama game. So he got hurt before the Alabama game, right? Because Florida came before Alabama, so he got injured there. Yeah, to your point, I mean, I do think they miss him. I think that you got to tip your hat to Georgia and to the offensive play calling and the scheming and what Mike Bobo put together. I mean, Alabama had a wide open receiver, Ryan Williams, down the middle of the field in the fourth quarter. That would have been a huge play, and they missed him. Just overthrow by Milroe. Mississippi State should have had a touchdown on a bust. They had some stuff in the middle of the field that they missed a couple of throws on. I just think Georgia looked at it and said, hey, you know what? Well, let's go after them in the middle of the field. Let's test Tennessee's safeties. Let's see if we can get the matchup on Tennessee safeties that we want to get, or matchup on the linebackers, and see if they can cover us. And I think that was Georgia's only path, because particularly when Bell got hurt, who's the real threat on the outside, right? It's not, no offense to those guys, but they're just kind of, I don't want to say pedestrian, but they're not the most explosive guys on the outside. So how are you going to attack? Well, you attack with the tight end in the middle of the field. And you look at the numbers there that we have on the screen. I mean, that's what they did. Past the line of scrimmage down the middle of the field. Look what they did: 2 touchdowns, and they missed 1 ball in the middle of the field, and they just really attacked Tennessee safeties. That's something Tim Banks got to find an answer to, because they're going to see that again. Now, maybe UTEP can't do it, but Vanderbilt's going to try to do that. They're going to try to work the middle of the football field. I think it's the safety play. I think it's the linebacker play, linebacker depth and coverage. And I don't think anybody on this team misses Keenan Peely more than Arion Carter does right now. I think there's a lot being placed on Arion Carter mentally. I think it's probably slowing him down a little bit instinctively right now. And, yeah, they miss him. But you know what? He's been gone for 4 or 5 games, and they've played and survived without him. Georgia attacked you, and you didn't have a very good answer for it last night. You better find an answer for it moving forward, because you're going to see middle-of-the-field attacks again with offenses that you play. And it'll start with UTEP. They'll try to scheme you up in the middle of the field as well Saturday afternoon.
Well, it's that former
Scotty Walden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coach Austin P last year, and I mean, that Mesh was there all day, gave Tennessee a lot of issues. So, I mean, they're not going to beat you, but they're going to try to play with you a little bit in that regard. Grant, I know you got to run here. Before we let you go, tell us about Tennessee basketball this afternoon. If anybody knows, Tennessee basketball did play. They won 103-68 over Austin P. Transition. Looked like it was just scorched earth there from the field. Tennessee 63% shooting in this basketball game, whereas Austin P 35% from the field, and really, really good day from one of Tennessee's transfers specifically.
They shot 70% in the first half. I don't think they'd shot 70% and a half since 2023. I think that's how good they were shooting the basketball. But yeah, Igor Milicic, man, he had 18 and 10 Wednesday night against Montana. He comes back today. He had 15 in the first half. I think he finished with 23, 9 and 4, something like that. Zakai Ziegler had something like 18 and 9. I think he missed maybe 1 shot from the field all day. They scored 103 points, and they didn't have anything from Chaz. He scored 5 points, on 1 made shot. That's what kind of day they had kind of elsewhere. It was a lot of other guys. Cade Phillips, he had 13 and 9. Those are both career highs. Jordan Gainey in the second half. Jemai Meshack got to the foul line more than he's ever gotten to the foul line. And they didn't have JP Estrella. He's out with a foot issue. The sophomore center, it's been a off-season thing that was a problem for him. It's still a problem for him. Big men and foot issues don't really mix very well, so it's something concerning kind of long-term, I think, moving forward, even though Rick Barnes said after the game it's day-to-day. But this Tennessee basketball team has really taken care of business. I didn't think they looked very good, honestly, against Indiana or Gardner-Webb first couple times out. They went to Louisville, and they ratcheted up the defense, and they've played a couple mid-majors since then, and they've treated them like the mid-majors, like you should treat mid-majors, and won the basketball games the way you should.
Grant, is with Igor, is this level of competition? Is this him getting comfortable as a newcomer in the offense? What has led to the last 2 games of the offensive output? Because, I mean, that's a guy that a lot of Tennessee fans, the first 3 games that he played, kind of like, wait a minute, I don't see it. Like,
Right.
what's the deal here? So what's happened with him the last 2 ball games?
I didn't see it myself either against Indiana, against Gardner-Webb. It just kind of looked like he was kind of swimming a little bit, not really moving so fast. And I think the phrase that Rick has used a couple times with him is they're trying to kind of rewire his brain because he's at a different level where he's got more talent around him. And every time you touch the ball, you don't got to go do something with the ball. You can facilitate it. You can do whatever you need to do based on what you're seeing from the defense or the flow of the offense at that time. So I think he's settled in a little bit. I think he's just feeling more comfortable. I think he's kind of getting his legs under him at this level and figuring out, what he can do, what he can't do, where he can take advantage, what he needs to do differently if that stuff's not there. And I think he's just got a lot of help around him. Zakai Ziegler's played really well last couple of games. Felix Okpara, you look down at the end of the game and he's got 12 and 6, and it feels like he didn't really force anything. He just kind of did what he had to do when he got the ball down in his hand. So he's been a really good addition for them, along with Igor and Chaz. So it looks like they've kind of struck gold so far in the transfer portal, and they're going to need those guys because they're a little bit of a thin basketball team right now.
Grant, I know Jordan Gainey is going to be like the scoring guy off the bench. You want to bring him, to get buckets and all that. I want to ask about a couple of second-year guys for Tennessee. It looked like Cam Carr. He hit last game. He missed this game. It's going to be like that a little all season long. But I mean, the guy I've been impressed with here early in the season. I think he's going to play just a massive role for Tennessee's Cade Phillips, especially with the injury situation with Estrella.
For sure,
versatility to his games. Is Phillips, but 13 and 9 today. Of course, had a big game, last time out as well. I feel like Cade Phillips, along with, Gainey's, just bringing a lot to the table from the bench.
I've been calling Cade Alabama Fulke because he comes from a long line of Alabama athletes, and he's kind of got a little bit of Fulke upside to him. To me, the kind of the twitch he has, the athleticism he has, the scoring ability he has, I think he's going to grow into that kind of player. I do think it's going to be forced a little bit because they're going to miss Estrella, and he's going to have to do a little bit more. Maybe that changes something for Darlington Dubar moving forward, where they're going to have a little bit bigger piece of the pie for him because JP's sidelined, depending on how long that takes and all that stuff. But Cade has showed some stuff. He gets a little bit careless sometimes. He turns it over. It's a little bit frustrating to watch if you're Rick Barnes. I think he's said that a couple of times, but I think it's part of the growing process. I think he had a good offseason. I think he's taken steps forward that you wanted to see early on, and now it's about him kind of just continuing to build on that, settle in, and kind of just continue down this path he's on.
Grant, how big of a test is this weekend? Going to the Bahamas, you got Virginia, you don't know who you're going to play in round 2. I know Rick likes these types of tournaments and likes these types of games. Virginia's a little bit of a different team right now because of Tony Bennett leaving. But what kind of test is Tennessee going to get in the Bahamas this weekend?
How excited are you for your little vacation to go down there, right?
I wish. I don't really know what to think of Virginia in the post-Tony Bennett era. It's just a weird situation where he retired 3 weeks ago, a month ago, basically. So late in the process, it kind of stunned everybody. I think it was a bad rumor over the offseason that it might happen, and then suddenly it happens. So they beat Villanova the other day. Villanova's not a very good basketball team. But the teams on the other side of the bracket, Baylor is ranked 12th. They lost by 40 at Gonzaga to start the season, but I don't think that's really who they are. And then St. John's, that's another tough one. So they've had some mid-major kind of tests that they could pass here and kind of fill themselves out a little bit. And now you go to the Bahamas, you get 2 games in 2 days, and kind of can see what you can do on a quick turnaround, a quick scout, regardless of who you're going to get on Friday. Whatever happens on Thursday, it's going to be a good basketball team and a good test. So be plenty to learn from that trip.
I know you got plenty of practice being a parent this weekend, hanging out with me in Austin throughout the, drives and all that. But go spend time with your actual kids here the last 15 minutes of a Sunday night.
They're already asleep, and I'll be asleep about the time the door shuts behind me.
Appreciate it, Grant. Thanks, buddy.
See you, boys.
Thanks, man. You're the best.
All right, that is Grant Ramy, hardest working man we know. Do want to welcome on Matt Ray as well. Matt, of course, has the sideline view from during the game, so we always like to get his perspective on some things. But first, let's start in the recruiting realm. 2 Tennessee commits, big-time commits that Georgia is not going anywhere for, really trying to swing and stay in this. Of course, Shady Hayward and Christian Gass. Georgia won this football game yesterday. Does it move the needle at all in terms of those 2 Tennessee commits?
Well, I don't think so, Eric. I mean, the more I've kind of poked around into it this weekend and continue to ask around and talk about it, I think Tennessee feels pretty good about where they continue to be with Shady Hayward and Christian Gass. Georgia's going to continue to recruit those guys, but Shady Hayward did not make the trip back to Athens this weekend, and he told me earlier in the week that he doesn't have any plans to go back. He's pretty content with where he's at now. Still got a few weeks here, and we'll see who secretly shows up somewhere or doesn't show up anywhere or anything like that. But he was not in the recruiting section in Athens last night. He was at home watching the game and, continues to maintain really good communication with Tennessee. And it continues to feel like that's a really big uphill battle for Georgia right now. Christian Gass went back and forth throughout the week. Would he go to the game? Would he not go to the game? On Monday, he was going to the game. On Wednesday, he was not going to the game. It ended up he went to the game, but he went as a spectator. He did not go into the recruiting section. He bought a ticket, went and sat in the stands and watched the game. And, the more I've continued to ask around there on each side, I think Tennessee's continued to do a lot of really good things there. There's still some runway left in that recruitment possibly. Georgia really covets him. They want to add another linebacker to the class, but I think Tennessee continues to do a really good job with Christian Gass. Credit Josh Heupel, William Inge, Coach Chop, Lavorne Harbin. Just the relationships that they have with Gass and his family continue to pay dividends.
What about Travis Smith? I mean, that's another one that kind of doesn't get talked about when you talk about the guys Georgia covets, because it's all about Gass and Shady Hayward. But what do you make of Travis Smith? Where is that one at? I know what Wilfong put out this afternoon. It seems like Tennessee may have weathered that okay early on, but what's that one going to look like? What's that runway look like the next 3-4 weeks?
Yeah, I haven't seen what Steve put out this afternoon, but in just asking around, checking with Travis Smith, I think things still continue to line up with him in Tennessee. I think the numbers in the receiver room make a lot of sense. I think Tennessee's consistency matters there with him. Obviously he took an official visit to Georgia. They pressed him pretty hard during that official visit back in the summer, really wanted the commitment, didn't want him to be able to get out on the road anymore. They're still trying to add bodies at receiver. And if you look around, as well as Carson Beck played last night, Georgia's they don't have a lot of numbers at receiver. Once Dylan Bell went out, they're kind of looking around like who's going to be the next guy up. So they're going to add. They've already got 4 guys, I think, in this class, or maybe 5, and coming from the high school ranks at this point, and probably want to add a couple of bodies through the portal. So they've continued to maintain contact with Travis Smith, but I think the relationship with Kelsey Pope's strong. I think his consistency of getting back to campus is good. We'll see if Tennessee gets him back to campus this weekend. But I think right now Tennessee's okay there. I think things still continue to line up, but Georgia's obviously going to keep communication strong there until the end.
Yeah, I mean, he's told Steve Wilfong that he's solid to Tennessee and that he's getting ready to be a midterm guy. So, but you never know. This thing's going to be crazy here. It's always crazy down the stretch.
And again, same thing with Travis Smith. It's that time of the year. It's really silly season with all this stuff going on. Travis told me on Wednesday night, yes, he's going to Georgia. I asked him what he's looking for in that game, what he wants to see. And really just said he wanted to see 2 college football playoff contenders battle it out. Well, then I checked back with him last night because I never saw him in the recruiting section with any of the guys that I felt like he'd probably be with, be that one Gasson or Julian Lewis, who's his 7-on-7 quarterback, or some of his other teammates from Westlake. Never saw him, and he told me he wasn't at the game. So I think it's one of those deals where Georgia can maybe get him back to campus later in the cycle and maybe try to. But I think, again, things continue to line up pretty well there for Tennessee. When you look right now, they've got 3 receivers in this class. They're not looking to add another from the high school ranks currently, and I think he likes that.
Yeah, and let's not forget, you talk about it being silly season. The windows moved up this year, December 4th through 6th. I mean, we're literally hitting that home stretch, talking about weeks until these guys put pen to paper, go ahead and sign some things off. Last thing before we get to the game, at least for me, in terms of recruiting, Tennessee trying to finish off 25, holding on to some of these guys, running back, defensive linemen. These guys have been committed elsewhere before. Where are we in terms of chasing Morris and Campbell and some of these others?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Isaiah Campbell's official visit to North Carolina wraps up today. It will be interesting to kind of see where things go for him from here, from this point. I mean, he wanted to see the nearby program. If you talk to people about Isaiah Campbell, some will describe him as a homebody. They've done a good job of building relationships. Kind of since he decommitted from Clemson, the consistency in terms of what Tennessee does up front, the rotation, and where the direction of the football programs made a lot of sense for him in Knoxville. But, North Carolina's going to swing really hard, and it's very clear this is a 2-team race, as now we're basically a little over 2.5 weeks out to the early signing period. I don't know that he will take it all the way to the early signing period. I don't feel like that's the type of kid that he is. I think he wants to make an informed decision and let these staffs know to where they don't have to sweat it out all the way to the finish line. He still continued to maintain good contact with Tennessee. The relationships are strong there, and that's never changed. I mean, that's a credit to Tennessee. That's a credit to Rodney Garner, Coach Chop, the way that they recruited him back to when he was committed to Clemson. I mean, he tried to shut things down after he committed in January, and they just kept that relationship going. And kept, letting him know that he was a priority, never pushing too hard, but just pushing the right buttons. And and making him feel like he was wanted in Knoxville, and it has a chance to pay dividends down the stretch. As far as DeJuan Morris, it's a big official visit weekend for him coming up. I think Tennessee checked a lot of the boxes during the visit earlier in the month for the Kentucky game, but I still think you've got some things you've got to get home this weekend. I think there's still questions, that he and his family are going to want answered this weekend, things that they're going to want to see. I think some around him still like the idea of USC, and USC still recruiting him hard. They were out to see him during the evaluation period last week. As Austin Price said last night in the recruiting wrap up that we do, he was back at USC. So, they're not going to let him just kind of ride off to Tennessee, right off into the sunset. That's going to be one Tennessee's going to have to work and get across the finish line here in this weekend during this official visit. But I think the plan for him after the official visit is to make a final decision pretty quickly.
I want to ask I know we're going to get back to the game for a second, but I do want to ask this, Matt. With this, the signing day moved up, does that make it easier to hold on to players, or is that going to make it harder? You got a Thanksgiving holiday, games in season, some high school kids are still in the playoffs. Is it going to reduce some of the flips right at the finish line or not? What do you think the calendar does to that part of the recruiting cycle?
Yeah, it feels like it would be the pursuit would increase there as well, right? I mean, it would just get a little crazier a little sooner, right?
It does feel, it feels like it's gotten crazier sooner, but I don't know that all these are going to get all the way to the finish line like they have before. And I think part of that's just because of the calendar and the way things shake out, because you've got, that SEC championship week right there after the early signing period. So, or conference championship week right there after early signing period. So you've got those teams kind of preparing for that, the season closing out. You've got Thanksgiving sandwiched in there. How many kids are getting to campus on all these weekends? So I do think things are more condensed. And if you look around, I think it makes it a little bit easier to hold on to guys, especially these big time guys. Because I mean, you look at Christian Gass. He won a playoff game on Friday night. He's focused on trying to win a state title and go out the right way at Eastside. Like he may be ready to put this recruitment on the back burner. Like it's starting to be. It's back to that point where it was when he committed in July. Right? It's an everyday thing. You're being pulled this direction. You're being pulled that direction. Yeah, football's important in July, but right now, as we're here closing on Thanksgiving, football's really important in November when you've got a chance to go out with the state championship ring. So I think for a lot of these guys, it makes them at least get to a final decision easier. And if you come back to some comfortability, I think it probably makes it a little easier to hold on to them.
Going back to the game, Matt, and you kind of touched about this a little bit in the post-game mini-pod last night. Some young guys last night, true freshmen. Sure, they made some mistakes, but Boo Carter making plays, Peyton Lewis making plays. In terms of recruiting, kind of on this theme, I mean, you're seeing Tennessee's willingness to play some of these young guys, and I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than that, right? Going out there and making plays on the road at Georgia. What'd you think about Peyton Lewis last night? I know he had some slip-ups in pass pro, but I thought he ran the football pretty well, especially on that one drive. I want to say it was in the second or third quarter where he had a couple of nice little runs.
Yeah, Peyton Lewis, like any freshman, they're going to have some slip-ups in pass pro. Dylan Sampson had at least one slip-up in pass pro last night.
It was a big one.
Yeah, it just happens with these running backs, it seems like. But I thought Peyton Lewis had a really good night, had a really nice catch out of the backfield, really did some things well in between the tackles. I thought the main thing for Peyton Lewis was he didn't seem to ever be too high. Like he was always really patient and setting some things up, and I thought that's why he had some success. He didn't look like a freshman in that aspect to me. He was behind his blocks, let things kind of develop and ate up some yards. And I thought he had, like you said, Eric, a couple of really nice runs on the one drive.
I know one thing. He get 20 carries for me Saturday. I know Dylan Sampson's in pursuit of potentially a single season rushing record, but man, I'm getting Dylan Sampson healthy this week, and I'm getting a lot of Peyton Lewis on Saturday afternoon, Eric. Sorry.
No, you're good. Hopefully Deshaun Bishop's back, and it's a Bishop and Lewis type of show. I wanted to ask you, what did you think about the running back rotation last night? I mean, they've been pretty predictable in terms of 2 series on, 1 off, especially in the first half, then kind of ride in the second half. But it felt like, they did more changing in and out during series in that football game? Do you think it was more or less just to keep Sampson as fresh as they possibly could? Because that's something that I've noticed that they don't typically do an awful lot of. They were running Sampson out there on third down, then putting Lewis back out there. What'd you think about the running back rotation?
I think it was all about pass protection. I think Peyton Lewis had a couple of misses early. They knew they were going to have to throw it on third down. Georgia obviously ramped up their pressure after the first quarter. After they got spotted 10-0, Georgia changed. They got much more aggressive, trying to heat Nico up. And I think Tennessee was trying to ensure that they had a chance to move the sticks on third down by giving their quarterback the best option to throw the football and have some time to do that. So I think they were wanting to spell Sampson there, but when they got into third down situations, I think the comfort level was with Dylan Sampson and pass pro, and that's why you saw him rotate in. And if they made the first down, he would rotate back out in that series.
Matt, down there on the sideline, do you see anything that maybe we us up there in the press box or the radio booth maybe didn't? In terms of sideline vibes, change of momentum, anything. When did that game kind of change for you, or at least did you feel a change down there on the sideline there in the second quarter when Georgia really started to get in this football game?
Yeah, I mean, from my standpoint, I'm in the end zone most of the night, other than flipping back and forth. Not really up and down the sideline too much, but I thought in the fourth quarter from Tennessee there, as I flipped ends, the bench came to life. I mean, they were like, hey, we got a chance to go do this. We're still in this ball game. There were a couple of guys vocally getting up, to kind of ramp things up. But, I thought really, Eric, it was that part of the third quarter where you just really felt the energy in the stadium kind of turn around. Tennessee doesn't do anything with the first drive, and then Georgia finds some points. And obviously the 12 man on the field penalty, that helped them. I still don't think that call made a lot of sense. And, obviously Tennessee still had a chance to get off the field there, but it's a different situation. It's 3rd and 7 versus 2nd and 2. Is that right? So
I think that's right. Yeah. Very different.
Very, very different, setting, situation there, but kind of with the way that Tennessee did, there's nothing that would have surprised me if Georgia would have picked up that 3rd and 7. I mean, Tennessee didn't get any pressure up front. The defensive line didn't get home, and the secondary didn't do a great job of covering behind it when you were just rushing for. And then Georgia, and schematically, I think Mike Bobo probably isn't going to get enough credit from Georgia fans, but I thought schematically he had an excellent night. I thought they did some things that really, threw Tennessee for loops. They hit a switch concept on Boo Carter that Dominic Lovett just couldn't haul in. Probably Carson Beck's worst throw of the night.
Matt, the motion, they kept motioning Arion Smith out and having Tennessee's defenders bump to get that one-on-one matchup with Will Brooks. They were picking on Will Brooks. And to your point, schematically, pre-snap motion, all that, they continue to do that in the second half, and I thought they did a really good job in that regard. Yeah,
they really did. They did a good job of winning the matchups, and it was very clear from the first drive of the game, even though Georgia went 3 and out, what their goal was going to be on Saturday night, and it was to throw the ball down the field. And they come out and took 2 shots in the first drive. Obviously, they went 3 and out, but that it was very clear what they were going to do. I thought Tennessee, from a run defense standpoint, was okay on Saturday night. They let Carson Beck hurt them a couple of times. Obviously, the one long touchdown run, was crucial. But I thought overall, when Georgia was just handing the ball off, Tennessee did a pretty good job in their run fits for the majority of the night. But just didn't find the breaks to win the football game.
Yeah, there was a couple of things for me that I didn't really, and I saw it live and then on rewatch that was a bit of a kind of puzzling. Georgia in that first series, they were so afraid of Tennessee's pass rush. They max protected in that first series.
Yep.
And then they as the game went on, they kind of got out of max protection. They suddenly gained confidence in their offensive line. Like, hey, we don't have to leave a tight end and a running back in. We can go more than 2-man routes. And when they got to that point, that's to me when the motion really got into Tennessee's into the effect, because they got multiple people in routes and could do different things schematically when they realized they didn't have to keep a whole bunch of bodies in there. The other thing that was surprising to me, Eric, is I was surprised to see Jamad McCoy missed basically an entire series on that touchdown drive that gave Georgia the lead at 14-10 maybe, or whatever. I may be wrong there, but it was in the first half. And then and they played Farouk at some point, and I don't know if somebody was hurt, but I mean, Farouk hadn't played in an SEC game on defense. Those two, from a rotation standpoint, maybe there's injuries there, but I didn't understand either one of those moves at that point in the football game.
Yeah, one of my buddies texted me and said, "Where on earth is McCoy?" And I went down there and I looked, and he was standing right beside Willie Martinez, ready to roll. I don't know why. I mean, McMurray made a couple of plays, mind you, as well. But as far as Jacoby Thomas, he played 9 snaps according to Pro Football Focus. I don't remember much on defense, but he downed that punt there at like the 6. He played special teams. Maybe he's going through something right now, but you're right. On the goal line, when they had that play action or the run action on the right, and they dealt with the second touchdown, I mean, that pulled Farouk, Brooks, T-Lin, pulled them all in, and they dumped him over the top. I'm not sure why, of all the times to play a freshman in this situation, that probably wasn't it. But yeah, I'm curious to know about those situations as well. Anyway you want to spend it, Tennessee does fall on the road to Georgia, 31-17. It's going to be a fun week to see exactly what all happens. It's going to be, fun last 2 weeks to see, who beat who and what this means for this team. Guys, I think we can expect Tennessee to, fall obviously in the rankings. I think Heather Dinich at ESPN has Tennessee as the first team out right now, but still very much in this conversation. Very much in this conversation for the college football playoffs. Don't necessarily control your own destiny, but has a good chance of making it. And we'll see how it all plays out over the next 2 weeks. And right now, Brent over Volquest.com, we got basketball coverage, we got football coverage, got recruiting coverage. We got a whole lot going on over Volquest.com right now. There's no better time to join our site.
Well, we're going to continue to talk about the Georgia game and kind of where Tennessee goes from there when we'll turn the page on it. But there are things to learn from that moving forward. We'll continue to discuss some of that stuff. As disappointing as everybody is right now, and that's certainly understandable, there's 2 weeks left in the regular season, and Tennessee is very relevant in the college football playoff conversation. Are they in? No. Do they need some help? Yeah, I think they need some help. But they don't need 12 things to happen. They need a couple of things. One thing here or there, the right thing to happen for them puts them in a good spot if they take care of the business. I said it earlier, and I truly believe this, Eric. Josh Heupel sets the tone with his football team tomorrow. And what's the tone, and how does he manage that with his team for not just the UTEP week, but to get ready for Vanderbilt, and understanding that there's still plenty to play for here over the next 2 weeks. That's what Josh Heupel's sell to his football team is, while everybody around those guys are certainly disappointed, including those guys.
Yep, disappointed, but just like with any game, just like with any week, win or lose, you got to flip the script. You got to change things up and get after it, and that's up to Josh Heupel and the veterans, the leaders on this football team. Of course, Senior Day is coming up this week as well. So big week ahead. Tennessee football continues on, and we'll break it all down over at Volquest.com. Enjoy doing this on Sunday nights. We'll do it again next Sunday night as well, and we couldn't do it without our friends over at Spivey King and Spivey LLP. If you got a problem, let them find a solution for you. T. Trail Lawyers, specializing in criminal defense, family law, and personal injury. Free consultation. You can pick up the phone today and dial 423-245-4185 or visit them online at SpiveyKingandSpiveyLLP.com. For Brent Hubbs, Matt Ray, I'm Eric Kane, Grant Ramy as well, joining the show here today. Appreciate you guys for joining us here on the Rocky Top Rewind. We'll see you next Sunday night at 8 o'clock right here on the Volquest.com YouTube channel.